Hello everyone and welcome. First and foremost, thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. I'm Jeff Reed. I'm a Business Development Manager at MedTestDX. MedTestDX is a medical device company that provides screening, confirmation, and testing solutions to clinical laboratories. We mainly focus on decentralized laboratories, and what we like to do is partner with these laboratories to make sure that our products not only impact their workflow, but they also impact the end patient that's being diagnosed. And this is really going to be the premises on today's presentation, which is how clinical laboratories can save money and help physicians become patient-centric. I'm excited to have Tony McCraney on the call today. Tony is a supervisor at Premier Medical Laboratory Service. Tony has a vast background in clinical laboratory testing, so it's very excited to have him on the call, and we look forward to driving a very insightful webinar. I'm going to start off with a quick introduction of the overall webinar, which explains what is a value-based healthcare system and the importance of moving towards a value-based healthcare system. I'm going to compare this for first the standard fee-for-service healthcare model that's in place. Then I'm going to get into the shift to value-based payments and how this is going to impact clinical laboratories. Clinical laboratories are one of the most important keys to the shift to value-based healthcare, so it's important that they know this and that they actually adapt to new ways of operating so they can be successful in the future. We all know that laboratory automation has been in the forefront for clinical laboratories, so I want to introduce a new clinical chemistry analyzer, which is known as the BA800M. It's a fully automated chemistry analyzer that is capable of doing drugs of abuse testing and general chemistry screening. At this point, Tony is going to hop in and talk about different chemistry analyzers he utilizes in his laboratory. He was also one of the first users of the BA800M chemistry analyzer, and he's going to go over the benefits he has found with this analyzer and how it's helping him and other clinical laboratories become more efficient. At this point, we'll summarize everything up. Now, before I get into the introduction of the webinar, I want to let everyone know that the slide deck we're presenting on is attached to this webinar platform, so please feel free to download it at any time. Also, my contact information along with Tony's contact information will be on the last slide, so if you have any questions pertaining to the topics we're presenting on today, please feel free to reach out to either one of us. Let's start off by going over the importance of the healthcare industry shifting to a value-based market. This data here was taken from the World Health Organization, and you can see that 60% of the deaths worldwide are due to chronic diseases. And these chronic diseases can range from all the way to diabetes to, let's say, cancer. Now, the most important number here is that there is an annual expenditure of $7.8 trillion due to these chronic diseases. And this is roughly 10% of the world's gross domestic product, and it is expected to rise 6%. So you can see we're dealing with some very high numbers, and that means it's a very serious situation. The current model that's in place now, which is a fee-for-service model, it's not going to be sustainable for much longer. We need to move more towards a value-based healthcare system where the patient is put first. So your quality, your healthcare team, your safety, your operational performance, the clinical laboratories, they're all working together for one thing, and that's the patient health. The less the patient spends in the healthcare system, the less cost that it's going to cost the healthcare system, which means the reimbursement rates will discontinue to drop and hopefully raise eventually. And this is really what I'm going to touch on in this presentation. In this slide, I'm comparing the fee-for-service model versus the value-based healthcare model. You can see they're both reimbursed by third-party payers, whether it be an insurance company or a government agency, and that's going to be either Medicare or Medicaid. It's dependent on the patient's age. The difference is that the fee-for-service, they incentivize higher-paying services, where the value-based healthcare incentivizes services best for the patient. For the fee-for-service, the billing and payments are determined by the number of visits and tests they ordered versus the value-based healthcare, where the billing and payments are determined based on the outcome achieved through the medical care. Lastly, for the fee-for-service, the payment-based are on the services performed, whereas the value-based, the payments are based on the success of the procedures. So you can see fee-for-service is more about quantity, whereas value-based healthcare is more about quality. This goes back to my last slide, where fee-for-service, there's not much emphasis on the patient spending time in inpatient facilities, whereas the value-based healthcare, there's a strong emphasis on reduced time spent in inpatient facilities. Again, the more we have the patient spend less time in the healthcare system, the more it's going to drive the cost back down and also impact the reimbursements in a beneficial way. Now let's get into the shift to value-based payments. Anytime you're talking about value-based healthcare, you also have to talk about the providers and how they're shifting their payment models. So why are they shifting these payment models? The 4 bullet points here really explains this. The insurance provider market is more saturated than ever. There's a lot of competition between the different providers. There's an increasing pressure from the public along with commercial payers to not only lower cost, but also to improve the quality of the health care. Also, there's been a lot of poor performance quality indicators, whether it be direct indicators or indirect indicators on the healthcare system. So something has to change, and with that, it's going to, again, shift more to a value-based healthcare system, which is going to change the providers on how they pay the healthcare professionals. The ultimate goal is to really align physicians and hospitals with bonuses and penalties with the cost and quality of the outcome measures. Pretty much they need to make sure that they're fully aligned and the payment objectives measures the clinical quality of the patient. So again, the patient needs to start coming first. You're going to start seeing this more in the healthcare system, but also the way the providers are paying for the healthcare treatments as well. In this slide, I'm showing 4 different types of value-based payment models. The first 2 are shared savings and shared risk. These go hand in hand. They both utilize a fee-for-service model. However, there is a specific target that is put in at the end of the year. If the entity does not hit that target and there's extra monies left over, that is going to be shared in as a bonus to the entity. Vice versa, shared risk is that if there's extra monies that is exceeded, that's going to be put into place that they have to repay, and it's going to be put into place as a penalty. For the bundles, the hospital physicians, clinical labs, and all the other services, they're not paid separately. They're all bundled together with one payment for a service that's linked to a particular condition. Lastly, you have global capitation. Pretty much this is when an organization receives per person or per month payments, which is intended to pay for all individuals' cares regardless of the service being performed. So again, you can see providers are moving to these different models. Here are the 4 main type of value-based payment models. There are more out there, but it's something to be aware of because this will impact the clinical laboratory in the long run. So So really, let's get into how is this going to impact the clinical laboratory. This data here was taken from the American Hospital Association annual survey data from 2017. You can see on the commercial side, the commercial payers or providers are decreasing from 42 to 35%, where the government agency, in this case it's Medicare, it's increasing from 35 to 39%. Now obviously this is due to the fact that the baby boomers population is aging, but what this means for clinical laboratories is that they're getting lower reimbursement rates from Medicare and Medicaid, so they're going to start working with tighter margins in the clinical laboratory. This means they have to adapt to new ways of operating and find ways to be more efficient and save money in the long run. One thing I don't have shown here is Medicaid. Medicaid is actually growing faster than Medicare. So again, hopefully this slide here really shows you that there's got to be a different way to adapt in operating your clinical laboratory so you can still be profitable in the long run. So let's look at a new way to adapt in operating for a clinical laboratory. The most important thing, you have to contribute to the reduction in cost of the overall patient interaction. So mainly you need to help the patient spend less time in the healthcare system. So how can you do that? You can increase the speed and accuracy of correct diagnosis. You can provide rapid turnaround time, streamline your operation, which means you have time to do other tasks in your laboratory. You can point to the most appropriate test selection and treatment protocols. And lastly, you can monitor patient health to prevent diseases. An example would be pre-early cancer screening. The faster you can find, diagnose a patient with cancer, the faster you can treat that patient, which means it's going to, again, have that patient spend less time in the healthcare system. Again, we need to have them spend less time in the healthcare system so that the costs go back down and the reimbursements go back up. Now let's get into a little bit about laboratory automation and specifically about the BA800M and how it is assisting clinical laboratories to become more efficient and help physicians become patient-centric. First, before I introduce the analyzer, let's look at these 4 bullet points. Quicker turnaround time, which leads to faster diagnosis, cost savings and avoidance, and the physician-patient satisfaction. This should be the clinical laboratory's goal. The faster you get the turnaround time of the test results, the faster the physician can diagnose a patient, the more you can cost save for the physician, means the more you can cost save for the actual patient, and then you're always going to have that physician-patient satisfaction, which is going to reduce the cost of the overall patient interaction. So looking at this slide, the one thing you can ask yourself if you're working in a clinical lab, are any 4 of these pain points for you? Are you having trouble with turnaround time? Are you having problems with cost savings? Are the test results you're sending in not in a timely manner so that the physician and patient does not have a adequate satisfaction level, or are you sending in false positive? There's a lot of things to look at when it comes to this. So if these are pain points for you, I want to now point out what we refer to the BA800M. This is a large-scale discrete random access chemistry analyzer. It's designed for mid to large volume clinical laboratories. It includes a broad range of general chemistries, which we just launched for this analyzer, and we're actually very excited to say by the end of the year we will have these moderately complex on the analyzer. The analyzer is also capable of doing drugs of abuse testing, ISC, and also specialty assays. The unique thing about this analyzer, if you see on the right, it has what we call a sample delivery module. This sample delivery module hosts several samples that will feed the samples to the analytical module automatically. So again, we talked about being more efficient for clinical laboratories. This will allow the operator to walk away and spend more time on other tasks. Let's now take these 6 key bullet points that pertain to the BA800M and how we, including Premier, worked with other clinical laboratories and how we're finding that these 6 features, these 6 unique selling propositions are aiding these clinical laboratories in becoming more efficient and, again, helping the physician become more patient-centric. So with the sample delivery module and the actual analytical unit that hosts sample positions on it as well, it can hold up to 440 sample positions. So once you load these samples, you have ample enough time to walk away, perform other tasks in the laboratory, which really is going to increase the efficiency of the laboratory. We talked about ways how we can cut savings. Well, one way is working with an analyzer that has a low minimum reaction volume. The BA800M has a minimum reaction volume of 100 microliters, so you're going to have a direct saving on the upkeep of reagent costs. So this is drastically going to improve your margins, which you can actually pass on to the physician and get more satisfaction from them. It also has a 4-reagent format, so it's capable of doing specialty assays. An example would be vitamin D, which requires a 4-reagent format in most assays. So you don't really need a standalone analyzer to do specialty assay testing. The BA800M can do this, so it's capable of doing several different specialty assays due to the fact that it is a 4-reagent format analyzer. We spoke a little bit about how clinical laboratories can increase their productivity. The BA800M has a 1-key stat selection and touchscreen monitor. This unique selling proposition here really allows the end user not to have to be in front of the analyzer as much as if it didn't have this feature. So again, they can load the samples, get the analyzer running, and then focus on other tasks in a laboratory. One key thing we also pointed out is quicker turnaround time so the physician can have a faster diagnosis, and that means that they're able to treat the patient faster, and again, the ultimate goal is to have the patient spend less time in a healthcare system. Well, the BA800M it performs 1,200 tests per hour with ISE, which is one of the highest throughput analyzers in its class. Lastly, it does have bubble and clot detection. We also noted earlier that they have to be accurate test results. So the fact that we have bubble and clot detection on this analyzer is very advantageous for the physician because they're not going to receive inaccurate test results due to the fact that there could be a bubble in the test that skews the actual test results. So that's it for my section. At this time, I want to pass it on to Tony, who again is going to talk about different analyzers he utilizes in the laboratory and the benefit he gets from each one. So Tony, at this time, please move forward with the presentation.
Thank you, Jeff. Good afternoon. My name is Tony McCraney. I'm a medical technologist and the core laboratory supervisor for Premier Medical here in Greenville. We are a growing laboratory that is offering a wide range of services to our patients and our clients, which are doctors, hospitals, and clinics across the U.S. We have basically 3 laboratories in one, the first being our core laboratory that does basic analysis that you would find in any hospital laboratory except for larger instruments. We have a genetics laboratory that does testing such as the pharmacogenomics to see if you, by way of your DNA, can take certain medications or should be averse to taking those medications. Cancer panels to see if you are genetically predisposed to receive a type of cancer diagnosis at a later time or at any time in your life, as well as all this testing that will help a doctor steer you in the right direction after seeing what your genetic profile is showing. I have been in this profession for almost 30 or over 30 years, and whenever I first started, there was very little technology in the medical technology, and it has grown significantly. Our laboratory utilizes the Roche Cobas 501-601E system, the Olympus AU640 for validity testing, the creatinine, pH, specific gravity, and alcohol to see if a urine sample has been adulterated in any form. The Roche also does immunoassays. Our drug screen is done by immunological assay as well on the BA800M. We used to use a Pyxis 700, which was very manual, very time-consuming. We then moved up to the Olympus AU640, which allowed more time away from the instrument, but the BA800M took over all of those functions and allowed us a lot more flexibility. For hematology, we use a very advanced analyzer that is almost like a and I can't think of the word at the moment. Anyway, a very advanced hematology instrument that does white cell differentiation, which really increases our ability to do less manual testing after. Our HiCore 288s are for allergies. We have 6 of those. For the toxicology, the final testing, once we have determined that a sample is presenting as a drug, then our confirmation is done by the LCMS double triple quad analyzers by Agilent. The BA800M, as already discussed, has allowed more walk-away time. The maintenance went from an hour and a half each day of making sure things are going, down to less than 30 minutes. The resulting time decreased to where we were only able to do 600 samples a day with 14 tests on them, down to 1,000 to 1,200 a day. The heated sample probe is one of those reasons, and also more cuvettes. The AU640 would not allow you to see any results until the entire patient was finished. The BA800M allows each result as finished to pop up. Therefore, you are able to see how you're proceeding at real time, not waiting for that final test. The reagent volume decrease. The multi-tiered programming allows you to program non-patient samples ahead of time. So imagine 10 levels of pre-programmed samples that you can pull from and say, okay, run panel 1, you can run the level 2, level 10, wherever you are going to have it. So if you want to remove programs or samples or reagents and place them, you have those already pre-programmed, ready to go to calibrate, to get that sample ready to go, and it speeds up your process. And finally, the faster reagent loading, whenever you go and you're halfway through a sample and you realize, oh, you need to add more. You can pause it very quickly and go straight to adding that. It then automatically adds that reagent to your profile, ready to go, and you can tell it, hey, go ahead and run QC on that real quick, and then move on into your next sample. Critical alarms are decreased due to this because you aren't having to constantly be there. The quality control program is like the program EP Evaluator. It's included in there. So at the end of the month, when you need to pull all of your QC data from the month and validate it, you can do that very quickly and then move on straight into the next month's processing. The reagent storage is easier to use so that you can put on multiple reagent boats of the same type, and you can tell it that they're there. You can calibrate them ahead of time and QC them so that it automatically knows, okay, I'm finished with this one, let me go into the next one, and it's already ready for you to go. The technical manuals are on the instrument for you, denoted by a question mark off to the side. If there's anything that you need to know, you hit that question mark on the touch screen. It brings up the page of the manual for you automatically, so you don't have to go looking through a book. The book is there for you. The online technical support, I use them on a frequent basis whenever I had questions, when I was learning. But using that information together, we work as a team and able to use the instrument and make it little nuances available to me, and I was able to make this instrument work so much faster and easier for me, so that the adjustments that I needed through help were able to be implemented to streamline my process even faster. Programming for the QC and calibrations was done ahead of time, so all I had to do was go in and pick up, okay, this is what I'm doing today, my standards. Do I need to calibrate something? It will tell me. It lets me know. And it made my daily functions so much easier. And I really enjoy working with that instrument. I am available for any questions. At this time, I'm going to hand it back over to Jeff and for our final comments.
Tony, thank you so much. Again, it was very nice to have you on this webinar. If anybody has any questions pertaining to the topics we presented today, we have both of our email addresses here. Please feel free to reach out to either one of us. Also, if you're not subscribed to the MedTest Bright Talk channel, please do so. We're going to be pushing out more videos that are pertinent for clinical laboratories and ways they can become more efficient. So that concludes the webinar.